Welcome back everyone to Genshin Interact. We'll be taking a look at the first half of the 4.1 banners today. First looking into another new Fontaine character, Neuvillette, and another rerun for the director of the Genshin funeral parlor, Tao. Let's go through both of these banners and see whether or not they are a good pulling option for you.
If you do enjoy the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe and check out the rest of the channel for other videos you may be interested in. We are super close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and once we get there, we will be creating a Discord server for you guys to connect with us and with each other. We hope this will be a great way to answer questions and get your ideas for content you want to see. The Chief Justice of Fontaine, Neuvillette, and the director of the Genshin funeral parlor, Tao, might be tempting, but are they for you?
Now, onto the video. So the first character we're going to be looking at on the first half is going to be Neuvillette. Looking at him, as we've already seen him in the Chief Justice, looked at multiple different things and what he's going to do. The first thing we want to look at with Neuvillette is looking at his team function and where he kind of fits in a team. So Rift, how can you help us there?
Yeah, well, just taking a quick look at what kind of what he does and where he will fit in, like you're saying, I think he's going to be a great Hydra DPS, specifically focusing on that charged attack that we kind of looked into doing some research recently. He's going to be very heavy on that, and also incorporating his skill and burst to kind of help, do that, and some passives we're also going to look at in a minute here. But really, any Hydra-related teams seem to look good. I feel like, and we're going to talk about it later, but I think most of any Hydra-related reactions is going to be very helpful to any team he serves in as the driver in that team, the main on-field DPS. And he could also, maybe be a quick swap character, and we might talk about that a little bit later. But looking specifically into his kit, Vixen, what can you show us about with that?
Well, he ascends into crit damage, which is going to be really helpful to worry about crit rate in his actual substats, so make sure to keep that in mind. First, looking at his normal attack talent, it's a little bit more difficult because this is where most of his main damage is going to be coming from. And his normal attack talent is called As Water Seeks Equilibrium. So, looking into this first and foremost, we see the charged attack empowerment legal evaluation. This is going to be basically like a charge up. So while charging up, Neuvillette will gather the power of water, forming it into a seal of arbitration. In this state, Neuvillette can move and change facing and look around, and as well absorb any source water droplets and a certain AoE around him that he'll get from his skill and his burst, which we'll talk about in a second. Every droplet he absorbs will increase the formation speed of the seal and will heal Neuvillette at the same time, and this will be really helpful because in a second we're going to see that he loses HP as well. When the charging is stopped, if the symbol around Neuvillette that you can see, the Seal of Arbitration, has not been formed yet, then a charge attack will be unleashed, not the charge attack Equitable Judgment. If it has been formed, that Seal of Arbitration has been formed, then a charge attack Equitable Judgment will be unleashed. Once again, now going into charge attack Equitable Judgment, this is going to unleash a huge wave of AoE Hydro damage to opponents in the straight line area right in front of him. This Equitable Judgment hit will not consume any stamina, but it will last for 3 seconds. And here's maybe a little bit of the downfall. If Neuvillette's HP is above 50%, he will continuously lose HP while using this attack. Now once again, talking about those source water droplets, you could heal yourself, and here we see that he actually is going to be losing HP when he actually does that huge beam of damage. So this is actually going to help him to heal himself and maybe hurt himself, but allow him to do a lot of damage in the process.
Now taking a look at his skill, this is called O Tears I Shall Repay. This summons a raging waterfall that will deal AoE Hydro damage to opponents in front of Neuvillette based on his max HP. After hitting an opponent, this skill will generate 3 source water droplets near that opponent. At certain intervals when the raging waterfall descends, a Spirit Breath Thorn will descend that will pierce opponents, dealing Numa aligned Hydro damage. Looking now into his burst, this is called O Tides I Have Returned. This unleashes a rupturing wave that will deal AoE Hydro damage based on Neuvillette's max HP. After a short interval, 2 waterfalls will descend and deal Hydro damage in a somewhat smaller AoE, and will generate 6 source water droplets within an area in front of him.
Now looking at the other side of the banner, we're going to look at Tao, one of the famous Pyro DPSs that you'll see in the game. First we're going to look at her team function and where she will fit in a team. She's going to be a Pyro DPS, like I just said a second ago, and she is going to be an on-field character, and she really works well with Vaporize and Melt teams, because this is just going to help her do even more damage in her skilled state. Now going on to her kit, Rift, what can you tell us about what's actually going on here?
Yeah, so in her kit, she ascends into crit damage with her ascensions, so getting crit rate is going to be probably pretty important for you to do, especially if you have her weapon, because that's also crit damage, which we'll talk about later. Her normal attack is called the Secret Spear of Wangsheng. This doesn't have anything special on it, but I would suggest still leveling this, as using her skill to give her that infusion definitely, helps her normal and charged attack damage. Looking at her skill, this is called Guide to Afterlife. Hu Tao will consume a set portion of her HP to knock the surrounding enemies back and enter the Paramita Papilio state. Now, while in this Paramita Papilio state, this will increase Hu Tao's attack based on her max HP at the time of entering this state. Attack bonus gain this way cannot exceed 400% of Hu Tao's base attack. This will also convert her attack damage to pyro damage, which cannot be overridden by any other elemental infusion. Charge attacks applied the Blood Blossom effect to the enemy's hit. What the Blood Blossom is basically a mark that enemies will be affected by, and you'll be able to visually see this within the game. And over time, they will take pyro damage every 4 seconds. Each enemy can only be affected by one Blood Blossom effect at a time, and its duration may only be refreshed by Hu Tao herself.
Now looking at Hu Tao's burst, this is called Spirit Soother. It commands a blazing spear to attack, dealing pyro damage and a large AoE around Hu Tao. Upon hitting an enemy, this is going to regenerate a certain percentage of Hu Tao's max HP, and this can be triggered up to 5 times based on the number of enemies hit around her. If her HP is below or equal to 50% when the enemy is actually hit, both the damage and HP regeneration are increased. Now looking at some passives to mention, we do want to talk about her second passive, Sanguine Rouge. At least I'm just going to hope that's actually how it's said. When Hu Tao's HP is equal to or less than 50%, her pyro damage bonus is increased by 33%. This is going to help her do even more damage in that actual state when she's using her skill. So making sure that her HP is really low is actually going to be a big part of having her on a team in a kit. So although a lot of people use healers with her, you're going to want to make sure her HP is lower than 50% most of the time.
Now taking a look at the weapon banners, first we're going to talk about Neuvillette's weapon. This is called Tome of the Eternal Flow. This has a main stat of 88.2% crit damage at level 90, and we're going to state the abilities at Refinement 1. This weapon will increase your HP by 16%, and when current HP increases or decreases, charged attack damage will be increased by 14% for 4 seconds. This has a max of 3 stacks and can be triggered once every 0.3 seconds. When you have 3 stacks or refresh a 3rd stack's duration, 8 energy will be restored. Some of the best characters this can be used on is, of course, Neuvillette, but you may want to watch out using this for other characters just because losing and gaining HP is kind of a big factor on the ability of this weapon, which Neuvillette really utilizes within his kit like we talked about earlier. Neuvillette can increase and decrease his HP for this effect without getting hit and messing up his damage. Other characters like Wanderer might not be very keen on this weapon just because you really don't want to get hit with Wanderer.
Looking at the other half, we're going to talk about Hu Tao's weapon, Staff of Homa. This has a main stat of 66.2% crit damage at level 90, and we will be stating the abilities at Refinement 1. It's going to give you a flat increase to HP by 20%. Additionally, this will also provide an attack bonus based on 0.8% of the wielder's max HP. When the wielder's HP is less than 50%, this attack bonus is increased by an additional 1% of max HP. Now looking for the best characters, obviously this is going to be great for Hu Tao. Not only is it just great for Hu Tao for the crit damage, the HP, based off of the attack bonus and all of these things thrown together, but it's going to be really good for her because even in this weapon, it even throws a little hint very similar to her second passive. Her second passive, you want to have less than 50% HP, and with Staff of Homa, you also want to be lower than 50% HP to get that attack bonus even higher. Other characters that can use this is Zhongli, and the reason we would want this for Zhongli is because this is usually built for a half damage, half support. Once again, the attack and HP is not bad for him, as well as the high crit damage can make him really nice to have his burst off field. Another character who could use this as well is Zhao, and maybe some other polearm characters that really just want to focus a lot on damage. Now we're going to go into our summary where we're looking at all of our pulling options and really looking at asking a few different questions to each other. The first question I'm going to ask Rift for you guys is, do you need either character on your account?
So looking at Neuvillette, Neuvillette could be exactly what you're missing on your account. He seems easy to build with a lot of HP and crit. Throwing him into different teams seems very easy, and he can heal himself, which might make it more possible to go for another damaging support on his team rather than a healer. Looking at Hu Tao, probably one of the best DPSs in the game. I would heavily suggest thinking about getting her. Now, if you already have another Pyro DPS built and you don't wish to spend on her, or if you're waiting on Arlecchino, who seems to be a Pyro DPS character we're going to get in the future, then it would be best to skip on Hu Tao and save, or look at just other characters in general. The second question we ask is, what elements or roles is your account in need of? And Vixen, how can you answer that?
Well, Neuvillette adds to the roster of Hydra DPS characters, so it's not like he's the first one. He could be exactly what you want though. Maybe Nilou is just too niche for you, Ayato's kit is simply too boring for you, and maybe Child's kit is just too much to handle to look at with everything he has going on. Neuvillette has the simplicity of Ayato's kit with a lot more fun gameplay like Child holds. He has a high HP, and there may be an ability to maybe go into a niche Bloom team that you could really try to fill for that idea with Nilou as well. All this to say, Neuvillette might just be one of the best DPS we will get, especially in this Hydro category. Hu Tao is nothing short of a heavy damage dealer and a great character. Also being able to heal herself and make the most of both HP and attack stats, Hu Tao is probably one of the easiest characters in Genshin to build and makes her that much better for early and late game players. Easy to build with a high damage output is really great for any account. The next question we're going to look at is, do you have the resources to properly invest into the character you pull? In Rift, how would you answer that?
Neuvillette will need Fontaine materials, some of which you can farm now, but some of these materials are not going to be achievable until 4.1 drops its new region. So save your fragile resin and good luck farming. Newer players should make sure to finish the Archon quest in Mondstadt so that they can get a free teleport waypoint unlock after they finish it. This teleport waypoint will be in the northeastern area of Sumeru's Realm of Farakurt. Hu Tao, on the other hand, uses Leeway materials. Since Leeway comes right after Mondstadt, newer players won't have too much of an issue getting here to farm for her. The next question is, what kinds of teams are you actually trying to build on your account?
Well, Neuvillette seems like he'll fit, like we were talking about a while ago, he'll really look to fit in Vaporize and Freeze teams, which seems really fun to really look into the different things that he can do. But there could be an argument for a lot of different players for his involvement in Bloom related teams, which I think is going to make him really nice to do and really different to go into multiple different teams so he can go in an overarching for any type of idea for any different account. Hu Tao is usually used on Vaporize and Melt teams, and there is a heavily good reason why. These reactions, along with the characters that can support her and the characters that she usually likes for these reactions, help her damage jump higher even more than it already was in her actual kit. So I think these different things that you're trying to build with these characters are going to be the best, and I think Neuvillette and Hu Tao are great for these types of teams if you're looking to build them on your account. Looking at our next area, we're trying to weigh the dangers between new free-to-play players, veteran free-to-play players, people who spend a little bit, your dolphins, your whales, all these different points of views. These questions are for the people who are generally looking for help on whether or not they should pull one of these two characters. At the end of the day, they are your hard-earned primos, so you decide on how you spend them. But Rift, what can you tell us about free-to-play players?
Free-to-play players need characters that slot in a lot of different teams that make the game easier before the late game content kicks in. Watch out getting another character that has a similar role that you already have filled on your account, and we did talk about this in the question about, what team or what elements or roles you're trying to fill. And this is important to think about here, especially as a free-to-play player, because if you have gone after Child that we recently had, or any other Hydro DPSs like Ayato, maybe Nilou if you built her as their Hydro DPS as well. If you built any of those characters, it might be best to save your Prima Gems and look for other characters that fill roles you don't have on your account. Looking at Hu Tao, starting out with a great Pyro DPS like her would be a great option for any new player. Just keep in mind though that maybe if you already have Diluc or Yanfei and you've built them down the Pyro DPS route, you are going to just simply be upgrading a role on your account that you already have, and while that's fine, and it's totally fine, again, it's your Prima Gems, you do what you want with them, just know that you may do yourself a favor in the long run if you try to maybe save your Prima Gems and pull for a character that would rather support other teams that you could build in the future. Vixen, what can you tell us about veteran players?
Well, veteran spenders and veteran free-to-play players, you should already have a decent lineup at this point, and possibly 2 4-person teams for the Spiral Abyss, so you're not really looking for heavily crazy damage-dealing characters, although these two are them. Neuvillette just looks super fun just in general. With domains changing in Fontaine that buff your characters if they have a change in HP, Neuvillette might just make that domain grinding in Fontaine even more fun and maybe bring your numbers even higher. The Spiral Abyss in the future probably will change as well, and will probably have something to do with the change in HP, especially with Farina possibly having something to do with that as well. And maybe getting a character right now that has that might be great to actually buff your Spiral Abyss runs in the future. Hu Tao, on the other hand, should be high on your list to grab if you already don't have her, since she's just such a great character. Those of you who already have her, even if you normally don't go after constellations, and believe me, I'm not one to tell you guys to really go after constellations, Hu Tao's C1 might just need a second glance if you guys really want to. And speaking of going into constellations, Rift, what can you tell us about the two characters?
So if you are a high spender, Looking into what constellations can benefit characters the most is going to be a great thing to do for you. As a general rule, most good constellations other than a C6, of course, are going to be the C1 and C2 for a majority of the characters in the game. Neuvillette's second constellation is great for even more damage. The passive talent Heir to the Ancient Sea's Authority will be enhanced and state that each stack of past Draconic Glories will increase the crit damage of charged attack Equitable Judgment by 14%. The maximum increase that can be achieved this way is 42%. So that is just going to be adding a lot of personal damage to, Neuvillette's main way of damage, which is that charged attack. Looking at Hu Tao, Vixen just briefly talked about it a moment ago. Her C1 is probably one of her best lower end constellations to get. This could also be argued as one of the best C1s in the game. Her charged attacks in her Paramita Papilio state will not consume stamina with this constellation, which will allow you to do more attacks in a rotation instead of running out of stamina to use your charged attacks. Some other pros to this is you can actually do a full rotation with a C1 and run out of her infusion, and by the time you run out of infusion and you've done all those charge attacks, you still have about half your stamina bar left, which means not only are you getting through all of her charge attacks very clean and fluid rotation, you're still able to have stamina left over to comfortably use on actual, dashing attacks, dodging here and there, instead of being completely drained and now you're vulnerable. Now looking at our final question, do you need the weapons? And Vixen, what do you have to say about that?
Well, this really doesn't seem like too bad of a banner to really pull on. Staff of Homa can work on a lot of different characters, and we just talked about Zhongli as he just came out a few weeks ago, and he's going to be a great character that could use this as, both a damage and a support character build, and never mind Zhao, who may come in the future as well, or if you already have him, that's another great character to use as he loves the crit damage. And obviously Hu Tao herself is going to love this as it's her main weapon looking at for damage as well. You have other characters for Raiden and all these other polearm users. It's just such a great weapon to have really on most accounts. Neuvillette's weapon Tome of the Eternal Flow has such a high crit damage with an ability that could be used for certain DPS Catalyst users that it really could be useful for anybody as well. Even though this helps Neuvillette the most with that ability of changing his HP constantly, there are obviously times in the game where you are going to get hit and your HP is going to decrease and increase with healers, so maybe this catalyst with the high crit damage and even just some extra damage from some place from this catalyst could actually help you all around with your damage. All around, this weapon banner really does not seem like a bad idea to pull on.
We hope that this video could help you decide on whether these characters or weapons coming up on this next banner are for you.
As always, if you have any suggestions that may help other players, go ahead and let us know in the comments. Also, let us know who you will be pulling for. Thank you again for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.